The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description. If you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. He is in a room he has never seen with his own eyes. That is the first tell. The suit's optical processors render the galaxy in heat signature and force current, not in the warm register of human sight, and so every dream is wrong in this specific way. Too much color. Too much warmth. The room glows amber and soft white. The way medical facilities look to people who have the luxury of eyes that still function as eyes were designed to function. She is there. He does not reach for her immediately. This is the 47th variation of this dream, and he has learned what reaching accomplishes. The motion wakes him, the suit logs a cardiac anomaly, and she is gone before he can complete the gesture. So instead, he watches her face. He has learned her face better in dreams than he ever allowed himself to study it when she was alive. This is one of the smaller betrayals he carries, that he looked away, that he told himself there was more time. Her lips are moving. He reads them. She has said the same thing 46 times, and he has never caught it. Never parsed the shape of the words before the dream closes, and the suit reasserts itself with the particular cruelty of machines. Status nominal, vital signs stable, time 0314 hours. This time, he is ready. You were deceived. He wakes. The suit logs a cardiac anomaly. Elevated cortisol. Adrenal surge. It has logged 47 of these events over the course of the year, and the number means nothing to the logging system. The logging system does not dream. It counts. He lies in the dark of his private quarters aboard the exactor and breathes. In, out, in, out. He counts the 47th anomaly, and something that has been accumulating without a name for 47 nights finally acquires one. He is going to Polis Massa. The Emperor's orders are specific. A punitive expedition, the Outer Rim, 3 systems requiring the particular quality of attention that Vader provides, and that no subordinate can replicate. The orders sit in his command queue with the patient authority of a man who has never needed to repeat himself. Vader stands at the viewport of his private bridge and watches Coruscant's light begin to recede. The course correction takes 6 seconds. The Admiral, a careful man who has survived 3 years in this posting through the precise discipline of knowing when a question will kill him, speaks once. "My lord," the Emperor's orders have been received, Vader says. Set course for Polis Massa. He turns away before the confirmation comes back. The stars stretch into hyperspace. He can explain this later. A corrupted coordinate packet, a misrouted intelligence intercept. The Empire's logistics infrastructure is vast and imperfect, and Palpatine has never concerned himself with the small mechanical failures that bureaucracy generates. He will not examine this one closely, not if Vader delivers the Outer Rim results on a 2-day delay, and he will, because he has already calculated the timing to the hour. He stands at the viewport and watches the blue-white tunnel of hyperspace and does not let himself think about what he is going to find. He is only ready to look. That is all. That is everything. The asteroid field is exactly as desolate as it should be. The Kalidahin researchers evacuated months ago. The Empire's reach into the Outer Rim carries a specific atmosphere ahead of it, and scientific communities are skilled readers of political weather. The facility is dust and silence and recycled air that has been cycling through the same filters too long. His internal systems register the composition, nitrogen, oxygen, trace particulates, the faint chemical signature of disinfectant applied once and never refreshed. He walks through it alone. No troopers. No inquisitors. This is not an operation. It has no category in Imperial command structure. If he brought witnesses, he would have to decide what to do with witnesses afterward. And he is not ready to make that calculation. He knows the layout from Imperial records, knows which corridor, which bay, which bed, has known it longer than he has admitted to himself. The knowledge sits in his awareness the way old injuries sit in damaged tissue, quiet, until pressure finds them. He walks toward the pressure. Medical Bay 7. He stands in the doorway, dark, dusty, one bed offset from the others, moved in the chaos of departure and never reset, and the wrongness of it registers before his optical processors can account for why. He takes one step inside. The echo hits him like the leading edge of a blast wave. Not visual. Not auditory. The Force echo does not work in the language of sight or sound. It works in the language of presence. The accumulated weight of enormous emotion pressed into stone and metal and recycled air, preserved the way a scream is preserved in enclosed space. The room is still full of her. His left hand reaches for the doorframe. His mechanical fingers close on the metal and leave a dent in the precise shape of his grip. His systems register the postural deviation and flag it. He ignores the flag. He does not see her. He is not having a vision. What the Force presses into him is not an image. It is warmth, and it arrives not through the suit's sensors, which mediate and translate all physical sensation into data, but through the Force itself, traveling along a channel the suit cannot filter because it does not pass through the suit at all. It arrives the way the Force always arrives, directly, beneath the machinery, into whatever remains of the man inside the machine. The specific warmth of a living person in a room, body temperature, Force presence, the thermal signature of someone who is here and real and alive. His suit does not process warmth, but the Force does not ask the suit's permission. For 3 seconds, the room is full of it. And then something takes it. He follows the direction of the taking the way a navigator follows a gravity well, not by sight, not by logic, but by the pull of an enormous thing exercising its mass. The warmth flows outward along a channel cut through the Force like a sluiceway carved in stone. He follows the thread, follows the cold signature of what received it. Ancient, familiar, he stops following it before it resolves fully. He knows what it will resolve into. He has been standing in the presence of that signature every day for a year. He stands very still while the echo dissolves, and the room returns to dust and dark and stale recycled air. In, out, the GH7 unit is in a maintenance closet at the far end of the corridor. Power cell degraded to near zero. Memory module intact. He sits on the floor of the closet and opens the droid's interface port with his mechanical hand, the hand built for Force, applied now with the patience he learned in a slave quarter on Tatooine, repairing broken things with whatever was available. The droid boots into partial function. Its voice is fragmented, warped, every third syllable dropping out of range. He reads the medical logs on his internal HUD. Vital signs first. A stable post-delivery progression, elevated stress indicators, physical trauma consistent with labor, but stable. Alive, then the cascade. The medical system did not characterize it as rapid. Precipitous was the word the machine chose, and the machine was right. Her vitals did not decline. They fell. No physiological cause identified. Cause of death, loss of will to live. He reads this 3 times. Then, he cross-references the timestamp against a figure he has carried at the back of his awareness for 12 months, without understanding why he kept it, the exact moment his suit systems registered their first operational cycle in the Imperial Medical Facility on Coruscant. 4 minutes. 11 seconds. Her final vital sign failure. His first mechanical heartbeat. 4 minutes and 11 seconds apart. He calculates how long it takes a man to walk from an observation point to a bedside and compose himself before speaking. "I'm afraid she died," Palpatine had said, standing in that facility while the suit sealed itself around his ruined body, and the grief arrived simultaneously with the machinery. "It seems in your anger, you killed her. Not the damage she sustained. Not the injuries from Mustafar. Just in your anger." The phrasing of a man installing a conclusion rather than reporting one. The framing of someone who understood precisely what a person suspended in fresh grief, unable to move or question or examine, precisely what that person would need to believe in order to be useful. The math is not complex. The architecture of what happened here is transparent to a mind that has finally stopped flinching from it. Vader sets the droid down with the same care he used to open it. He stands. In the timeline that will later be described, the one the canonical record would one day carry, he finds this truth and is not ready, and Palpatine finds him not ready. And the cage is reinforced, and the chain is shortened, and the man inside the machine learns again that grief expressed is grief weaponized against you. He folds what he knows, stores it in a place that produces no heat, cold and structural and load-bearing. He will take it out when the time is right. He walks back to his shuttle. He gives the Admiral the outer rim coordinates. His voice is level. His systems show no anomaly. The exactor shifts course, and the stars rearrange, and the asteroid field falls behind them like everything else he has ever left behind. In his private chambers, he sits in the dark. The machine counts his heartbeats. He starts counting something else. The Emperor is in good humor today. Vader catalogs this the same way his suit catalogs ambient temperature, a figure that informs operational parameters without requiring any particular response. Palpatine is in good humor when things proceed as he designed them, and things are currently proceeding as designed. Outer rim pacification advancing on schedule, a rebel cell neutralized near Felucia, the galaxy folding itself into the shape the Emperor spent 50 years preparing for it. He sits on the throne with the specific contentment of a collector reviewing an arrangement that has not shifted since he last looked. Vader kneels. He has perfected kneeling. The mechanics are simple. The suit handles the weight distribution. The cybernetic knees adjust the angle. The respirator continues its count regardless of posture. What is not simple is what must accompany it. Palpatine is the most sensitive force reader in the galaxy. He does not probe aggressively. He never needs aggression. Aggression implies uncertainty about outcomes. He simply reads the currents in a room the way a man reads temperature when he steps outside, automatic as breathing, and anything deviating from the expected pattern registers. The trick, discovered in the hours between Polis Massa and this audience, is not to suppress the anger. Suppression requires effort, and effort produces heat, and Palpatine can feel heat. The trick is to change the nature of what is being carried. Anger has temperature. Anger radiates and shifts and is, at sufficient concentration, as legible to a force reader as a shout. Certainty is different. Certainty does not radiate. It does not move. It sits at the center of a man like structural material, load-bearing, cold, producing no signal whatsoever. Vader holds the fact of what he knows at the core of his awareness, like a weight he has learned to carry, without favoring the side it rests on. The training required to do this has taken 4 days of continuous application. He will not describe those 4 days as easy. He rises when Palpatine signals it. He reports, with complete fidelity, outer rim coordinates, pacification outcomes, efficiency metrics for the 501st. He is a perfect instrument filing a perfect report. He departs when dismissed. Palpatine watches him leave with the expression of a man who has not been surprised in 40 years, and has therefore stopped anticipating it. The maintenance bay on Deck 7 is the most important room on the Exactor. No one knows this, but Vader. It appears in the ship's internal manifest as a personal suit maintenance facility, access restricted by senior officer designation. Visual surveillance suspended on the standing pretext of schematic security. The pretext is reasonable enough that no one has questioned it in 14 months. No one questions much about Deck 7. No one visits Darth Vader in his workshop. He enters alone, seals the door, cuts the external speakers. In the silence that follows, the silence that exists only when there is nothing but the respirator and the work, he is not the Emperor's hand. He is not the Dark Lord of the Sith. He is an engineer with a problem and 400 square feet of workbench to solve it on. The Cortosis arrives across 3 separate shipments over 9 days. Machine components, officially, a tariff classification he selected with care. Since machine components cleared Imperial customs at Coruscant without secondary inspection if coded properly. He routed the transaction through 3 shell entities and 2 dead drops before it reached a supply freighter's docking manifest, logged as replacement actuator parts, addressed to Deck 7. No supply officer opened the crate. No supply officer opens anything addressed to Deck 7. The Mandalorian arms merchant who sourced the material charged considerably more than market rate. Vader paid it. He has no use for credits. The first filament takes 11 hours. The gauntlet circuitry in the left hand is the most accessible. The external housing can be opened without removing the arm entirely, which matters. Because removing the arm requires a medical unit, and there is no medical unit in this room. He works with the right hand alone, the biological right, the scarred right, the one that still processes sensation the way flesh was designed to process it. He is threading material finer than hair through channels built for something far less precise, and it must be continuous. And it must not touch the primary conduction path until the modification is complete, and it must bear a current load the cortosis manufacturer never intended it to bear. He does not rush. He thinks of Padmé while he works. Not the version that lives in the dreams. Not the face, not the lips, not the 47 cardiac anomalies and the word he finally caught. He thinks of her as purpose. She is the answer to why am I doing this, and the answer is simple enough that it requires no further examination. She does not need grief here. She needs application. He applies himself. The gauntlet modification takes 14 days total. He tests it with a portable capacitor, a device small enough to log as a diagnostic instrument, powerful enough to carry a sufficient charge. The discharge hits the modified gauntlet. The cortosis mesh routes the current along the new pathway. The primary conduction channel reads, 0 discharge. He holds the gauntlet up in the dim workshop light, invisible from outside. The suit looks exactly as it always has. The kill switch, in one hand, is dead. He begins on the chest piece that evening. The second audience is a briefing on the Inquisitorius. Vader delivers it with the same complete fidelity as the first: active deployments, known Jedi contacts, 3 restructuring recommendations for the mid-rim search protocols. He prepared these recommendations carefully, because prepared recommendations are what a focused and operationally engaged Vader produces. And he needs to produce evidence of exactly that. Palpatine listens with the particular attention he reserves for Vader specifically, slightly more present than he appears, slightly more active in his force reading than a casual observer would detect. Vader has catalogued this habit over 14 months. He is ready for it. The probe finds what he has prepared for it to find: the controlled ferocity of a predator between hunts, forward-oriented focus, operational clarity. Nothing beneath that. The certainty is structural, load-bearing, cold, and the probe moves across its surface and finds no purchase and slides away. "You seem settled, my apprentice," Palpatine observes. "Less volatile than in previous months. I have learned to carry my grief differently, Master," Vader says. Palpatine reads the response, reads it again. He finds nothing he wasn't expecting. "Good," he says. "Nothing more." Vader departs. The statement he made was entirely true. He has learned to carry his grief differently, just not in the way Palpatine thinks. He builds the map in the hours remaining after the workshop, and before the rest cycle the suit enforces, regardless of preference. 4 assets. He identifies them over 3 weeks. A senior communications officer whose encrypted transmission frequency matches no known Imperial fleet protocol, an admiral whose career trajectory maps too precisely to Palpatine's known preferences for loyalty over competence, an inquisitor operating under standing orders Vader did not issue. A political aide on Coruscant whose information access is disproportionate to her listed function. He does not act. He catalogues. He plans. This is new. Anakin Skywalker was built of immediacy, the burning decision that could not wait because waiting meant someone he loved might die in the interval. Vader is learning to think in months, to hold the map steady and not move on it until the map is complete, to become the kind of thing that does not announce itself. The modification on the chest piece takes 21 days. The primary cardiac support is the deepest infrastructure of the kill switch, woven into the respiratory monitoring, the neural feedback layer, the mechanical life functions standing between him and vacuum. He traces the conduction pathways by hand before touching them, building the cortosis route in his mind completely before beginning the physical work. One wrong connection and the modification becomes a malfunction. He is meticulous. He has no alternative to meticulous. On the 21st evening, he finishes the final connection and seals the housing. He stands alone in the maintenance bay. He does something he has never done, raises his right hand and generates a controlled discharge, force lightning, precise, contained, and directs it at his own sternum. The bolt strikes. The chess piece flares white. Genuinely visibly overloaded, a single suspended breath where the outcome is uncertain, and then the modified mesh routes the energy through the cortosis channels and dissipates it as heat along the suit's outer surface. The capacitor reads, 0 discharge. 0 conduction. In the dark of the maintenance bay, for 3 seconds, something that is not quite a smile exists behind the mask. Then it is gone. The kill switch is dead. The insurance policy Palpatine wrote into the architecture of his survival has expired without the architect's knowledge. This is necessary. It is also not enough. He needs documentation. He needs the notation in Palpatine's own hand, from Palpatine's own vault, held in his hand, undeniable. He switches off the workshop lights and stands in the dark, and begins constructing the pretext that will take him to Wayland. The lie takes 30 seconds to construct, and approximately 3 minutes to deliver, accounting for Palpatine's particular preference for a certain density of subordinate detail when being briefed on Jedi intelligence. Intelligence on a surviving Jedi, near the old Outer Rim colonies, unconfirmed but specific enough to warrant personal investigation. The route takes him through the Wayland system, an unremarkable piece of astronomical geography that appears on no imperial chart of strategic significance, because Palpatine removed it from those charts a long time ago, for reasons Vader is only now in a position to understand. He delivers this in the throne room with the meticulous fidelity he has been rehearsing for 3 weeks. The intelligence file is real, sourced from genuine rebel intercepts with the location data altered, and Palpatine reads it with the evaluative focus of a man who built the galaxy's intelligence apparatus and knows precisely how its products smell. He grants it without hesitation. "Go," he says. "Do not let this one reach the Outer Rim networks." "As you command, Master," Vader says. In the corridor outside, walking at the measured pace that suggests nothing other than purpose, he catalogues the exchange with clinical attention. 3 weeks of preparation, and the lie required 30 seconds to accept. Palpatine trusts him completely. The cage is only as strong as the assumption sustaining it. He is testing the assumption now, carefully, the way a man tests ice, moving forward before the creak can become a crack. Wayland does not appear on standard navigation charts. Finding it takes 3 days of following force impressions and dark side currents, the trail of a power source radiating for decades. Barely audible beneath the ordinary darkness of the galaxy, the specific frequency of something enormous being kept very quiet. He follows it the way a navigator follows a gravity well, not by logic, but by pull. He lands alone on a forested world that should not be as cold as it is. The dead mountain rises from the tree line, and his sensor array renders it in precise geometric contour. But the Force renders it as something else entirely, a wound in the terrain, an absence shaped like presence, a place where something has been pulled so far inward for so long that it has developed a gravitational quality. He approaches on foot. The forest around it is wrong. The trees grow. Nothing lives beneath them. No insects, no bird sounds, no movement at ground level. The dark side energy bleeding from the mountain has been doing this long enough that the surrounding ecosystem reorganized itself around the fact of it and stopped complaining. He enters through a service access he locates by tracing the power conduit buried in rock. The air inside carries the smell of old stone and something older than stone, a faint metallic resonance. Like ozone and rot and cold fire simultaneously. The storehouses are vast. Palpatine has been collecting since before the Republic fell, ancient Sith artifacts correctly preserved, Clone War material filed by campaign and date, Jedi relics stripped of Force resonance through alchemical processes Vader recognizes from his own training, and arranged with the patience of a man who intended to outlive the people who once carried them. He moves through corridor after corridor of organized centuries and does not slow. He is not here for history. The sub-chamber is at the facility's lowest level, behind a door that appears on no floor plan he found in the surface archival systems. He locates it through the Force, a concentration of power behind 3 meters of rock that the mountain's ambient darkness cannot entirely suppress. The way a shout cannot be entirely suppressed by a closed door. The lock is biometric. Palpatine's midi-chlorian signature, keyed at the cellular level. There is no forgery available to him. He stands before it for exactly as long as it takes him to decide. Then he burns through the lock with his lightsaber. Clean, targeted. A cut so precise that the outer surface of the door remains visually intact, only the internal mechanism destroyed. He applies force suppression to the alarm system simultaneously, a specific, narrow-frequency dampening technique that requires more control than power, and that Palpatine taught him without anticipating this particular application. He replaces the external seal's appearance before entering. The damage is invisible to anything short of direct technical inspection. No one inspects Palpatine's vault. Inside, a single holocron resting on a stone shelf. No container, no secondary materials, just the object, placed with the specificity of someone who considers placement a form of statement. The color is wrong. Not red, deeper than red, a frequency his optical processors can measure but his mind cannot name, a color that exists below the visible range and arrives as data rather than light. He picks it up. The gatekeeper surfaces. Not Palpatine. Something older, a face he doesn't recognize, from an era the Jedi purged from the historical record thoroughly enough that even his access to Palpatine's archives could not reconstruct the name. The gatekeeper recognizes Sith attunement. It does not require ownership. He navigates the index. He is not here for history. He finds the entry heading the transference. He opens it. The entry is clinical. The language is the language of documentation, precise, detailed, drained of the performance that characterizes everything Palpatine says aloud. He wrote this for himself, for future reference. That is what makes it irrefutable. The technical description first, an ancient application of midi-chlorian manipulation. Life force transferred from one organism to another through established force bond conduits. Donor dies. Recipient survives injuries that would otherwise be fatal. Marital bonds between force-aware individuals are optimal for transfer efficiency. The connection that develops between two people who have loved each other at sufficient depth creates a channel with lower resistance than any other biological pairing. Then, the application log. Applied successfully, 18 BB. Coruscant, donor, Amidala, Padmé, recipient, Skywalker, Anakin, bond, confirmed marital. Transfer efficiency, 94%. Donor survival, negative. Recipient survival, positive. Notes: emotional conditioning of recipient via survivor guilt framework applied successfully. Memory suppression through shock and physical conditioning, no additional force manipulation required. It is filed between two inventory records. A procurement log for artifact preservation materials. A maintenance note about the subchamber's environmental controls. Between two inventory records. The respirator counts. In, out, he closes the holocron. He stands in Palpatine's hidden vault, in the Dead Mountain, on a world that does not appear on any chart, and confronts the full architecture of what was done to him. Not simply that she was murdered. He has known the shape of that since Polis Massa, since the Force Echo, since the timing logs. That knowledge has had 3 weeks to settle into structural certainty. He has carried it, cold and load-bearing. This is different. This is the annotation that completes the equation. He runs on her. Every breath the machine processes, every cycle of the respirator, every beat the mechanical cardiac support counts, every moment of this existence in this suit in this body that should have died on a black volcanic bank and didn't, all of it is sustained by what Palpatine drew out of her and poured into him. The murderer breathes the victim, has breathed her for a year, will breathe her for every year that follows. Because the transfer was 94% efficient, and the donor did not survive, and there is no reversal process available in any archive he has ever accessed. He breathes her every moment. He did not know. He was told he killed her, told at the exact moment of maximum vulnerability, strapped into agony, unable to move or examine or question. And the conclusion arrived pre-framed, and he accepted it, because the alternative was a universe that operated on a different kind of cruelty, and he had not yet understood that this universe does operate on exactly that kind of cruelty, because Palpatine built the version of it that Vader has been living in. Emotional conditioning of recipient via survivor guilt framework applied successfully. No additional force manipulation required. He didn't need to be controlled through the force. The guilt was sufficient. The guilt was the chain. He forged it himself, link by link, across a year of grief, and Palpatine watched him do it and called it conditioning and filed it between inventory records. In the timeline the canonical record will one day carry. The version of these events where he found this truth too soon, too raw, with no preparation and the rage still at the surface, Palpatine felt the discovery through the Force and arrived before Vader could act. What followed was not a confrontation. It was a recapture, the cage reinforced, the chain shortened. A lesson administered in the specific vocabulary of pain that Palpatine has always been most fluent in. He takes the holocron. He burns the notation. Lightsaber to datapad. 3 seconds, nothing remaining. He seals the vault. The external surface shows no damage. He walks through the dead mountain and out into the cold Wayland air and across the forest floor where nothing moves beneath the wrong trees, and he boards his shuttle and sits in the cockpit for a long time before he files the departure sequence. The design is not finished. The trap has no ground. The confrontation has no terrain. He is an engineer, and he does not execute until the specifications are complete, and there is one variable he cannot resolve alone. He needs someone who knew her. Someone who has been looking independently, with eyes that understood from the beginning what Anakin Skywalker was and what he was likely to cost. Someone who has been building a parallel case from the outside while he has been building it from within, and who does not yet know that the outside and the inside have arrived at the same answer. He opens a personnel file on the shuttle's system. Old data. Pre-Empire. A woman whose formal designation was handmaiden, a title that was always a useful simplification and never an accurate description. She used to stand 3 feet from Padmé at every official function and watch him across the distance with eyes that carried no illusions about what he was. Those eyes knew what he was likely to cost. She survived. She kept looking. He studies the face in the file for a long time. Then, he plots a course for Naboo. The map has 14 points. He built it over 3 weeks from observation alone. No interrogations, no direct confrontations, nothing that generates a report or leaves a trace in any system he doesn't control. He watched the patterns in the exactor's internal communication traffic. He cross-referenced transmission frequencies against known Imperial intelligence routing protocols. He noted which officers modified their behavior in his absence, and which modified it in his presence, and which modified it in both, because those who modify it in both directions are performing for 2 audiences, and the second audience is the one that matters. 14 points. 4. Critical. The senior communications officer on the primary bridge sends encrypted reports to a routing address that doesn't exist in the exactor's official comm directory. He has been in this posting since the ship's commissioning, which means his installation predates Vader's command. Palpatine planned ahead. He always plans ahead. The officer is reassigned to Sector Command Administration on Corellia, a posting framed as promotion, carrying a commendation that took Vader 4 hours to fabricate with appropriate supporting documentation. The reassignment processes before the officer can generate a final report. His replacement is a woman from the technical division whose encrypted traffic generates nothing that doesn't appear in 3 other comm logs simultaneously. Competent, unattached, uninteresting to anyone monitoring from a distance. The admiral with the convenient career trajectory receives a command posting in the Tingle Arm, 3 sectors distant. Operationally significant enough to require his full attention, too far from Coruscant to be relevant when events begin moving. He accepts with the gratitude of an officer who believes his quality has finally been recognized. Vader signs the transfer order with the same hand that has killed Jedi Masters. It is the easiest thing he has done in months. The Inquisitor with unauthorized standing orders is dispatched to a rebel stronghold near Atollon. The intelligence file Vader prepares is accurate in every particular except the one that determines outcomes, the garrison strength. By the margin of that discrepancy, the engagement's result is predictable. The Inquisitor is recorded as fallen in combat. The report generates no questions, because Inquisitors frequently die in combat, and because officers who write reports about Inquisitors understand at an instinctual level that detailed questioning about such matters is not career compatible. The political aide on Coruscant is transferred to cultural heritage documentation in the Mid-Rim. She resigns within 3 weeks. The resignation is her own decision, made freely, without coercion. Command is the art of moving pieces you do not touch. The architecture that replaces them takes longer than the removals. He reviews 4 years of performance records across 3 fleet commands, eliminating candidates with political connections to Palpatine's known preference network. With promotion timelines that accelerate during moments of imperial political shift, with commendations signed by officers he has already identified as assets or former assets. What remains after this elimination is a smaller pool than he would prefer. It is also a cleaner one. He promotes 3 captains to admiral. They are competent. They have earned the rank by any metric he can apply: tactical record, logistical management, crew retention across extended operations. They believe, and they are correct to believe, that the promotions reflect their quality. They are also architecture. The 501st has always answered to him in the specific, unconditional way that units answer to commanding officers who have fought beside them. He extends that loyalty outward in careful increments, not through gesture or speech, but through the slower and more durable method of consistent operational behavior. He does not abandon his units. He returns fire support when requested. He ensures equipment replacement cycles run on schedule. He remembers the names of officers whose names he is under no obligation to remember. The loyalty that accrues from these practices is less dramatic than the loyalty that accrues from fear. It lasts considerably longer. In the workshop on Deck 7, between these calculations, he works through the secondary respiratory architecture. The air on a ship the size of a city has a particular quality: recycled, pressurized. Carrying the faint chemical signature of 1,000 bodies and 10,000 mechanical systems, undercut by the subdeck vibration that never fully stops, the distant percussion of turbolifts and cargo transfers running through every corridor in the hull. He has stopped noticing it. The workshop smells of machine oil and electrical discharge, and the specific dry heat of equipment run past its rated tolerance, and it is the only place on the ship that smells of nothing institutional, and he prefers it. The briefing runs 45 minutes. 6 officers around the table in the secondary command room, delivering reports on 3 active patrol sectors and 2 logistical operations. Vader sits at the head and asks the right questions at the right intervals. He is present. He is attentive. The officers speak with the care of men who have watched imprecise language produce consequences in this room, and he listens with what presents his focus, and is something considerably more complicated. He is simultaneously running 6 separate calculations that have nothing to do with patrol reports. Timeline to confrontation, approximately 9 weeks, pending terrain selection. Asset reduction, 2 of 4 completed. Architecture, stable. The SAB variable, unquantified. The remaining 3 assets in his command structure reachable within 4 weeks of careful maneuvering. The gap between current state and executable plan, measurable, shrinking, and only visible to him. The officers don't notice any of this. They see the mask and hear the respirator, and they choose their words carefully, as they always choose their words carefully, and they believe they are looking at attention. They don't know what they are sitting across from. Not the thing Palpatine made. That thing would have found this tedious and shown it. Something that has learned to be invisible, operating behind the mask within the mask, present in every register that can be observed, and absent in every register that matters. In the original timeline, the version of these events the canonical record will one day carry, Vader moved too quickly. The discovery was too recent, the Fury too close to the surface. Palpatine felt the temperature shift in the Force, and arrived before Vader had prepared the ground, and what followed was not a confrontation on Vader's terms. It was a recapture. The cage reinforced. The chain shortened. In this version, Vader asks a question about the fuel consumption differential in Patrol Sector 7, and the certainty lives so far below the surface that it generates no heat at all. The most dangerous predator is not the one that announces itself. The briefing ends. The officers file out. He remains at the table for a long moment before following. listening to the subdeck vibration and the distant sound of the ship running its ordinary business. 30,000 beings, and none of them knowing what is being built in the quiet. The casualty report from Anakin arrives on a Tuesday. He reads it in his private quarters, running down the roster with the systematic attention he applies to all operational documentation. The Inquisitor's designation. 2 support troopers, a shuttle pilot, losses consistent with the degraded intelligence file, predictable within acceptable parameters, generating no inquiry. And then Sergeant Delon Havoc, 501st Legion, 12 years of service, decorated for the Fondor campaign and again for Scarif cleanup operations, whose presence at Atollon is listed as a secondary fire support attachment, a last-minute addition to the extraction team, added by the intermediate logistics chain without his review, not in the operational order he drafted. He holds the name. The calculation that produced the Atollon operation was correct for the inputs it contained. The input it didn't contain was Sergeant Havoc. He was there, and the calculation did not account for him, and now he is not there, and the space his name occupies on the casualty roster has the specific weight of things that were not supposed to cost what they cost. The machine allows him to hold this for exactly as long as it allows him to hold things. He continues. 3 days later, on Coruscant, Palpatine convenes a formal recognition ceremony in the Imperial Palace's secondary reception hall. He is honoring the communications officer. The promotion is genuine, an authentic Imperial intelligence commendation processed through legitimate channels for 18 months of exemplary service aboard the Exactor. Palpatine delivers the citation personally. He describes the officer's loyalty in specific terms: tireless, invisible, operating without recognition in service of something larger than recognition. He tells the assembled staff that this is what Imperial fidelity looks like. He says the word fidelity twice, which means he wants someone in the room to remember that he said it. Vader stands 3 meters to the Emperor's left and watches the officer receive the commendation with the expression of a man accepting recognition he has earned. He has earned it. His secondary function has been excellent. His reports timely, accurate, usefully detailed, transmitted on a schedule that never varied by more than 4 minutes across 18 months. He is precisely the kind of asset Palpatine invests in, invisible in plain sight, positioned correctly, doing exactly what he was placed there to do. His reassignment to Corellia was processed this morning. He doesn't know yet. Palpatine concludes the citation and turns to Vader with the expression he uses when he wants something confirmed publicly. The particular angle of the head that means tell the room you agree with me. The Emperor's wisdom is, as always, instructive, Vader says. The words come out. The respirator counts its measure. In, out, he files the moment in the vault where he keeps all of them now, the force echo of a warm room gone cold, the timing logs that don't add up, the notation filed between 2 inventory records, the weight of a name on a list he didn't mean to include. The vault is growing full. He intends to empty it soon. The officer beams in the reception hall light. Palpatine places a hand on his shoulder. The ceremony proceeds. The map has 3 points now. Those 3 occupy roles where their reporting speed to Palpatine is measured in hours rather than minutes. Administrative positions. Non-critical intelligence channels, postings with natural latency built into their collection and transmission cycles. Hours are enough. They will have to be. Tracking her down took 6 weeks. Not because she was careless. She is the opposite of careless. And the care she has applied to remaining unfound is the kind of care that comes from understanding, at a structural level, what being found means. She moves between safe houses on cycles too short for conventional surveillance to establish pattern, pays for nothing through traceable channels, contacts no one she trusted before the Empire that she doesn't trust completely, and trusts no one completely. She has been doing this for 2 years. She is very good at it. What she cannot account for is someone with Imperial surveillance access who is also looking. He identifies the Lake Country house through financial anomalies in a defunct Naboo Agricultural Cooperative's records and comm traffic analysis that surfaces one encrypted signal she sent 4 months ago from a relay node she believed untraceable. The signal is untraceable by conventional analysis. He is not using conventional analysis. He used to command the apparatus that designed the tracking method she is using to evade detection. The gap between her evasion and his pursuit is not a gap in her capability. It is a gap in available resources, and the gap is unbridgeable. He arrives alone, no shuttle markings, no troopers, no theater of the Empire behind him. The lake country registers in his suit's sensors as data: temperature 22 degrees, humidity 71%, flora catalog expanding as he moves through it, ambient sound elevation consistent with a lake surface at approximately 40 meters, the resonance signature of water that has been here long enough to develop its own acoustic character. He catalogs it. The suit catalogs everything. What the suit cannot catalog is the smell, green and wet and alive in a way that has no parallel in anything he has inhabited for a year. The specific warmth of a place where nothing is dying, where the air carries no recycled atmospheric trace compounds, no ozone, no machine oil, none of the particular dead quality of pressurized space environments. It hits the suit's olfactory sensors and is rendered as chemical composition data, and the data does not capture what it is to be in a place like this. He registers it as alien. Wrong, a living place in a life built entirely from cold. The smell of it is almost an assault, and it is the only assault he has no counter for, and he walks through it to her door without slowing. She opens on the third knock. She is holding a blaster she has modified herself, the grip worn smooth with handling, the sight filed down for close quarters work. The modifications are competent. She has been expecting someone to find this house for some time, and she has been preparing for it to be someone who is not Vader. And her expression in the first second of recognition cycles through calculations too quickly for the suit's analysis system to cleanly resolve. She does not lower the weapon. He does not ask her to. He lets her hold it. "I know," he says. "What you're trying to find out. I already know. I have proof." She holds the weapon level. Her voice, when it comes, is controlled in the specific way of someone who has rehearsed control, because the alternative costs too much. "You were there when she died. Yes, you killed." "No." The word arrives the way stone arrives in still water, without effort, without drama, displacing everything. "I didn't." Silence. The lake makes it sound 40 meters behind him. She does not lower the weapon. She also does not fire it. These are two separate decisions, and she is making both of them consciously, which tells him something about her that the personnel file could not. "Come in," she says. It is not an invitation. It is an operational calculation. The house is 2 rooms and a kitchen, and the lived-in quality of a space someone has occupied for 3 weeks with the intention of leaving it behind without trace. He catalogs it the way he catalogs all rooms: exit points, sight lines, the loose floorboard near the back window she has left loose deliberately, for sound. She has been living with her back to the wall in the most literal available sense for 2 years. He notes all of this without comment. He takes the chair she doesn't indicate. She remains standing. The weapon stays in her hand. He tells her the Force echo first. The way the doorway of Medical Bay 7 held what it held, not as image, not as memory, but as sensation arriving through the Force itself. Bypassing the suit's mediation entirely, warmth in a place where warmth should not reach. Then the direction of its removal, and the cold, ancient, familiar signature of what received it. Then the timing logs. 4 minutes and 11 seconds between her last vital sign and his suit's first operational cycle in the Imperial Medical Facility on Coruscant. Then the medical records. The precipitous cascade with no physiological cause, logged by a machine built for precision that recorded something it had no category to understand. He does not tell her the holocron. The specific notation is more than she needs and more than it is safe for her to carry. He tells her the shape of what it contains, documentation in Palpatine's own records. That the transference was deliberate. Planned, filed, she listens. She doesn't speak. When he finishes, the room is quiet except for the lake and the respirator. "I found inconsistencies in the death record 2 months after she died," she says finally. The voice is still controlled. But the control costs her something. He can see the cost of it in the way she holds her shoulders. "I knew the official explanation was wrong. The cause of death didn't match the physical indicators in the transport documentation. But I couldn't." She stops. Begins again with the deliberate precision of someone restarting a sentence to get it right. I couldn't get close enough to the primary sources, not without surfacing in Imperial records. I can. I know you can. The weapon shifts slightly. Not lowering, adjusting, the unconscious recalibration of someone whose hands are thinking independently of her mind. That's not what I'm asking. Why are you telling me this? What do you need from me? He considers a lie. A lie would be more comfortable. It would also be detectable. She has been reading people in positions of power since she was 14 years old, and has spent 2 years practicing that skill in a context where a failure to read correctly ends conversations permanently. He answers honestly. When I kill him, Vader says, there will be a political vacuum. The Senate is dissolved. The military will fracture along lines of competing loyalty. The systems that suffered most under his rule will need someone who can speak to them, to Naboo, to the Outer Rim worlds, to the people who were present when the Republic fell, about what happened and why. Someone whose authority comes from something other than Imperial rank. A pause. You can do that. I cannot. She processes this. It is true, and she knows it is true, and she knows equally that it is not the complete answer. She waits for the complete answer with the patience of someone who has learned to be still. And, he says. She waits. Padmé would have wanted a witness who actually knew her. The sentence lands differently than everything preceding it. Not louder. Differently weighted. The weight of a thing neither of them has said in the same room before, her name in the mouth of the person who loved her and the person who destroyed her, and the two things are still the same person, standing 3 meters apart on Naboo while the lake sounds behind him. It is the truest thing he has said in the conversation, and they both know it. She looks at him for a long time. He lets her look. The terms take less time than might be expected. She provides what she has built over 2 years. Witness accounts from Polis Massa staff who evacuated before the Empire's reach extended to them. Inconsistencies she has documented across multiple official records. People who were present and saw things that did not survive the transition into the official account. 2 years of work that approached the answer from the outside while he was building toward it from within. Her work and his work are the two halves of the same case, and neither half is sufficient alone. He provides the answer she couldn't reach. What actually happened? Documentation that it was deliberate. In exchange, she stays clear of the confrontation. She waits for the outcome. When it ends, she decides independently what to do with what she knows, without direction from him and without constraint. The second condition is the one that takes her longest to accept, because accepting it requires her to believe he means it. He means it. As he moves to leave, she speaks from behind him. One question, she says. One. The pause before she asks it is the length of someone measuring an answer they formulated some time ago. Do you want her back? Or do you want justice for her? He stands in the doorway. The lake country night behind him is warm and dark and carries the smell of living things, and it fits him the way the cold rooms fit him, not at all. They're the same thing, he says. He walks back through the lake country to his shuttle. The living smell follows him longer than it should. He does not look back. She watches him go and does not believe him. He knows she doesn't believe him before he clears the tree line. That is acceptable. He sits in the shuttle above Naboo and thinks about what she asked. Do you want her back? Or do you want justice for her? He doesn't have an answer. He has spent 5 months with the certainty that he knows exactly what he wants, and the question opens a void beneath that certainty that the certainty was covering. What he wants is something the galaxy doesn't have a word for, the reversal of a single event and every event it cascaded into. The specific, impossible restoration of a moment that existed before everything that followed it. He cannot have that. No preparation, no modification, no confrontation on the best possible terrain will give him that. He can have the next closest thing. He calls up his charts. He begins to think about terrain. Ancient, isolated, saturated with the kind of dark side energy that interferes with long-range transmission. Somewhere, Palpatine cannot call for help from. Somewhere every approach is known to one man and not the other. He finds it on a world that appears on very few standard charts for reasons the Jedi work to obscure. He has accessed the reasons. He knows the world. He begins to plan the pretext. The choice of terrain is not instinct, it is architecture. He has been building toward it since the shuttle above Naboo, since the moment he called up the charts and began turning the problem over with the systematic patience he has been constructing since Polis Massa. The confrontation requires a specific set of conditions, each one necessary. None of them individually sufficient. A location that does not appear on Imperial navigation charts as strategically significant. A location where dark side energy creates communications interference dense enough to prevent Palpatine from calling for support. A location whose topology Vader has studied in detail and whose topology Palpatine has not needed to study. Because powerful men do not study the geography of places they approach as conquerors. He needs a place where he knows where every shadow falls. The Sith homeworld is catalogued in Republic and Imperial records as Moraband, a name that carries the cold, bureaucratic legibility of a civilization determined to classify what it feared. The Sith themselves called it Korriban. Vader uses the Sith name because he is Sith, and because the Republic's name for it feels like precisely the kind of erasure that the Republic was good at. The ancient designation belongs to the people who built the Valley of the Dark Lords, not to the ones who relabeled it. By either name, the planet appears on few standard charts. Where it appears at all, it is listed as a decommissioned archaeological site of minimal strategic value, a designation Palpatine himself arranged, because the planet is the Sith homeworld and Palpatine does not advertise his roots. The dark side energy saturating it is the accumulated residue of 1,000 years of its most devoted practitioners dying in its soil. Compressed into the geological record over centuries, an interference field that degrades long-range communication to the point where anything that happens on Korriban is substantially harder to transmit than the same event anywhere else in the galaxy. Vader has spent 3 weeks studying the Valley of the Dark Lords through every historical archive Palpatine's collection contains. He knows its 3 entry routes from the landing field. He knows the choke points in the tomb systems beneath, where passages narrow to single body width. He knows where the dark side currents run strongest. Amplified by proximity to the burial chambers of ancient lords, and where they hollow out into dead zones, places where the Force grows thin, where projection through it dissipates, where whatever happened in those chambers is still consuming everything that approaches. He knows the terrain. Palpatine does not. There is a specific chamber in the deeper system, accessible through the tomb of Darth Bane, where dark side energy runs thick enough to suppress long-range Force transmission. Not eliminate, suppress. In that chamber, a man's Force projections dissipate past a radius of approximately 40 meters. His reach collapses inward. His calls for help travel through a medium that absorbs them. Palpatine has been reaching outward through the Force for 50 years. In that chamber, he cannot. He will be, perhaps for the first time since he was a young man with ambitions and no one yet to serve them, genuinely alone. The tomb of Darth Bane, the man who established the rule of 2. 1 master, 1 apprentice. The doctrine that organized the Sith for a millennium. That currently means Palpatine and Vader. That ends today in the place where it began. The fabricated intelligence takes 4 days to construct correctly. The foundation is real, a rebel encrypted communication intercepted near the outer rim, authentic in format and routing, originating from a cell he has been peripherally monitoring. He builds outward from it, adding a supplementary signal thread, a secondary source corroborating the primary intercept, the redundant confirmation that makes intelligence feel like intelligence rather than fabrication. He has seen enough falsified files to know what genuine ones look like, and submitted enough genuine ones to know how Palpatine reads them. The content: a surviving Jedi Master has located an ancient Sith meditation sphere in the Valley of the Dark Lords, and is using the tomb complex as a Force nexus, attempting to establish a hidden temple in the one place the Empire would least expect. The Jedi is described as elderly, wounded, and in possession of pre-Republic holocrons. Plausible, Palpatine has always feared the Jedi finding power in old places. This file would bring Vader to Korriban personally. It would not bring Palpatine. He adds one detail. The Jedi claims to have found a way to restore physical wholeness to the Force, maimed through ancient Sith techniques, a method for reversing what the dark side, over years of intensive use, progressively does to the body of the practitioner who channels it. Whether this is something Palpatine has genuinely been searching for, Vader cannot confirm. What he can confirm is that Palpatine's physical form has been sustained rather than maintained since the duel with Mace Windu, and that any man who has lived as long as Palpatine has, through methods as costly as his, would find such a claim compelling enough to investigate personally. The lore does not require Palpatine to be desperate for it. It requires only that the possibility be one he cannot afford to leave uninvestigated. He submits the file and waits. Palpatine reads it in the throne room. He is very still for a long time, which means something is happening behind the stillness that he is choosing not to perform for the room. Then, he says he will attend the extraction personally, framing it as operational oversight. I will attend personally, he says. The techniques this Jedi carries are not to be destroyed. They are to be extracted intact. Understood, Master, Vader says. Official confirmation of Palpatine's personal attendance arrives through proper channels 40 minutes later. In his private quarters, alone, he allows himself 3 seconds of something that might be satisfaction. 3 seconds. Then he continues. He arrives on Korriban 2 days before Palpatine is scheduled to land. The Valley of the Dark Lords in person is different from the Valley in archival imagery. He has prepared for this, understood intellectually that the lived experience and the studied one would diverge. The divergence is still significant. The smell arrives before anything else. Old stone and something older than stone, the residue of millennia of dark-side ritual. Like ozone and rot and cold fire simultaneously, a combination that sits in no catalog his suit's sensors can match precisely. The sensors render it as a series of approximations that miss the fact of it entirely. Then, the weight. The dark side energy here is not the active, fluid kind present in a practitioner at work, not the concentrated variety stored in a focused artifact. It is ambient. Geological, it presses down from every direction with the patient indifference of gravity. Even Vader, who lives inside the dark side, who was assembled from it, feels it as pressure. It is the dark side the way the ocean is water, not a presence, but an overwhelming environmental condition that has its own opinion about what can survive in it. He walks the valley alone and does not hurry. He identifies the secondary escape route Palpatine's shuttle would logically use, the wider approach, oriented toward the orbital flight path an evacuating craft would naturally take. He places charges along it with the same precision he threads cortosis filament, not to block it immediately, but to make it unavailable at a moment of his choosing. The charges are keyed to his frequency, his alone. He marks the dead zones in his memory, 12 in the valley proper, ranging from 4 meters in diameter to 20. He walks the boundary of each one, measuring where the force thins against his extended senses, encoding the position of each into his spatial awareness, the way he encodes the dimensions of a room he expects to fight in. These zones are orientation points, positions so thoroughly memorized that in the confusion of combat, in the disorientation of pain and darkness, and 2 enormous force presences applying themselves to each other in a space designed to amplify everything, he will know exactly where his feet are. He descends into the tomb of Darth Bane. The silence in the deeper passages is absolute. Not relative, absolute. No wind reaches this far. No ambient sound from the surface penetrates this depth. The only sound is the respirator, and in this silence the respirator is louder than it has ever been, each breath a statement, each mechanical exhalation marked and sent back from walls that have been receiving the sounds of the dying for a very long time. The walls return his breathing the way they return everything, patiently, without comment. He finds the chamber, smaller than he expected, ancient in a way that the valley above is not, a chamber that predates the tombs built around it, that may predate the concept of the valley entirely. The dark side energy in it is so dense it has texture, not quite physical, not quite force, something at the membrane between them. He stands in it and extends his force sense outward and feels it stop. 40 meters. 43. Then nothing. The signal dissipates. Absorbed, He runs the confrontation from the beginning. Every permutation. Palpatine will probe him on arrival, the habitual force red that has become reflex over 50 years of being the most paranoid being in the galaxy. Vader must give the probe what it expects to find: focus, ferocity, the controlled purpose of a predator with a designated target. Nothing beneath that. Nothing with temperature. The certainty, as always, must be structural and cold and produce no signal. Palpatine will attempt to destabilize him once the mask drops. This is not speculation, it is behavioral pattern, documented across 14 months of direct observation. He will use the specific weapon he has always used most effectively, the suggestion that Vader is fundamentally a creation rather than a person, that the identity built on Palpatine's design is the only identity available to the thing inside the suit, and that without a master to define it. The thing inside the suit is nothing but a very powerful machine. Vader has heard this in various forms for a year. He knows what it sounds like at its most casual. He is prepared to hear it at maximum intensity and have it mean nothing. Most importantly, Palpatine must believe for as long as possible that Vader does not know. The mask within the mask, worn for 5 months through every audience and briefing and ceremony, must hold for a few minutes more. Long enough to close the distance. He sits below the tomb of Darth Bane and counts his heartbeats and lets 2 days pass. His comm registers Palpatine's shuttle entering Korriban's atmosphere. Estimated time of arrival: 12 minutes. He stands. The respirator marks the transition with its usual indifference. The chamber returns the sound of him rising. As it returns everything, the walls here have been practicing patience longer than the Sith have been practicing the rule of 2, and they are very good at it. The game that lasted 5 months is over. The real one begins. The escort takes 11 minutes. 10 individuals, 8 Imperial guards in their ceremonial red, 2 Inquisitors whose instincts are sharper than their training accounts for, and 11 minutes is longer than it should have been, a concession to thoroughness rather than difficulty. He doesn't kill them. Death generates questions, and questions require investigators, and investigators disturb timelines. He leaves them unconscious in the dust of the approach corridors, arranged with the same orderly efficiency he applies to everything, and returns to the center of the valley. He stands there. Still, the respirator counts. In, out, the valley in the early morning carries no wind. The dark side energy presses down from every direction with its geological patience, and the silence between the respirator's exhalations is the loudest silence he has ever stood inside, the silence of a place where an enormous amount has already happened, and where whatever comes next will simply join the record. The tombs on either side of the approach hold their dead with the neutral attention of things that have been holding their dead for a very long time. Palpatine's shuttle descends from the gray sky and lands at the valley's edge. He watches the ramp extend, watches the guards emerge first, the habit of 50 years, never first himself, always the protected center of a moving perimeter. Watches Palpatine descend into the cold morning and find the valley very quiet, and find his perimeter already absent, and find Vader standing in the center of it. Not in a combat position, simply present. Palpatine smiles the smile of a man who has not been surprised in 40 years, and has therefore stopped anticipating it as a possibility. He walks toward Vader with the unhurried pace of a man who has owned every room he has ever entered. "My lord," Vader says, "thank you for coming personally." The intelligence was compelling. Palpatine's eyes move across the empty valley without changing expression. "Where is this Jedi?" "There is no Jedi," Vader says. "There never was." The Force Sense probe arrives immediately, not subtle, a full, aggressive read, the kind Palpatine reserves for situations he needs to understand in seconds rather than minutes. Vader gives it the surface it has been prepared to find: controlled ferocity, the focus of a predator, nothing beneath. The probe finds no heat because the certainty has no temperature. He has maintained this for 5 months. He maintains it now. Palpatine's eyes narrow by a fraction. What is this? Still smooth, still measured, still performing. Good. Vader takes 3 steps toward him. 3 slow, deliberate steps, each one marked by the respirator, each one closing the distance in a way that is not yet threatening, but is also not compatible with the normal geometry of deference. He stops within 10 meters. "I know what you did," he says. "I have the medical records from Polis Massa. I have the Force echo from the room where she died. What it felt like when it happened. What signature the Force registered as receiving what was taken. I have your notation in the Wayland vault, filed under the entry title The Transference." A pause. Deliberate, long enough for Palpatine to feel the edge of what follows. "I have everything." The smile doesn't leave, but something behind it recalibrates. "You found the vault." The voice carries something that might be genuine appreciation. Impressive. The biometric lock was not designed for external. He stops. Considers, "You burned through it." A beat. "And replaced the visual seal afterward. You have been practicing patience, my apprentice." "I hadn't realized." "Stop performing," Vader says. There's no audience. Palpatine's eyes rest on him. "Very well." Smoother now, differently smooth. The surface of a man who has set down one instrument and picked up another. "You understand what the record describes. She was already dying. The transference preserved you. Without it, you would have died on that bank at Mustafar, and everything you've built, everything you are, would not exist." "She was not dying," Vader says. The words arrive the way stone arrives in still water. "She delivered her children, her vitals were stable. The medical log records a precipitous cascade with no identified physiological cause, at the exact timestamp that my suit's first operational cycle was logged in the Imperial Medical Facility on Coruscant. 4 minutes and 11 seconds between her last vital sign and my first mechanical heartbeat. One breath. In, out. You took her from me to build me." He does not say this with grief. He does not say it with rage. He says it the way a structural engineer reads a load calculation, as a fact that has been verified, documented, and will now be acted upon. Palpatine laughs. Not the practiced laugh of a man performing warmth. A genuine laugh, short, involuntary. The specific sound of someone who has been doing something for 50 years and has finally found someone worth doing it against. He has always been most honest in his cruelty. The laugh is the most honest thing he has shown Vader since Mustafar. "And what will you do?" The voice is warmer now, conversational, the tone of a patient teacher who has seen this moment before and knows how it ends. "I designed your suit, my boy. Every breath you take is mine. Every step those mechanical legs carry you is mine. Every beat of that cardiac support system that keeps you alive when your organic heart cannot manage alone. Mine. You cannot raise a hand against me without dying for it." "I disagree," Vader says. He raises his left hand. In the gray morning light of Korriban, the gauntlet catches what light is available. Looks exactly as it always has. The same black, the same plating, the same shape that has been part of Palpatine's inventory for a year. The cortosis filament threaded through it over 14 days in a workshop on Deck 7 is invisible from outside. "The suit's vulnerability to Force lightning was your insurance policy," Vader says. "You designed it into the circuitry before I wore it for the first time. If I raised a hand against you, you could end me in a moment. A single sustained discharge through the conduction pathway you left uninsulated for exactly this purpose." He keeps the hand raised. "I removed that vulnerability 3 months ago. Your insurance policy has expired." The smile remains, but it changes. The thing behind it that recalibrated earlier recalibrates again, and this time the movement is visible. "You are still a damaged thing," Palpatine says, and his voice has dropped into something quieter, more considered. The voice of a man who has shifted from one weapon to another with the fluency of long practice. A broken man in a box. The suit keeps you alive because your body cannot manage that independently. The suit mediates every sensation you experience. The suit is the difference between you and a corpse. Without me, Padmé called me my love. The sentence arrives in the middle of Palpatine's calculation like a stone dropped into machinery. He stops. For a moment that has no precedent in 50 years of mastering rooms and men and situations, Palpatine simply stops. The sentence came from nowhere that his calculation anticipated, and it is the most human thing Vader has said to him in a year, and the humanity of it is precisely what makes it land where it lands. in the space between the argument and the man making it. The GH-7 unit in the maintenance closet at Polis Massa retained its memory module, Vader says. The audio logs were intact. They recorded her last coherent speech before the cascade began. A breath. She called me her love. Then her vitals collapsed, and you were in that facility above us, and 4 minutes later you walked into the room where I was being sealed into this machine, and you told me that in my anger I had killed her. The pause now is not tactical. It is the pause of a man who has held this sentence for 5 months and is finally setting it down. You watched her die. You walked down the corridor. You chose the framing. He allows himself to quote the notation directly. Emotional conditioning of recipient via survivor guilt framework applied successfully. Memory suppression through shock and physical conditioning. No additional force manipulation required. The words of a man filing operational notes between inventory records. That sentence is yours, Vader says. I read it in your vault in your handwriting, and it describes what you did to me, and you filed it between 2 procurement logs, because that is all it was to you. An operational notation. A result worth recording and then returning to the larger work. The valley amplifies the sound of the respirator. In, out. In, out. The tombs on either side hold their silence. I am not your creation, Vader says. I am what you assembled from something you destroyed. I have been what you made for a year. I am done. Palpatine is still for a long moment. Then, something leaves his face. Not the smile, the thing behind the smile. The courtly manner, the patient mentor, the grandfather of an empire. All of it simply absent. The way a held breath is absent when it is finally released. What remains is not a performance. It is the calculation that has been operating behind every performance for 50 years, surfaced now because there is no longer a reason to keep it covered. He is extraordinary, even here. Vader has known this, has known it through 14 months of service and 5 months of preparation and the specific, totalizing experience of having been his instrument. Palpatine is one of the most powerful Force users in recorded galactic history, and he has been waiting, in some fundamental part of his operational awareness, for something like this for a very long time. He thought Anakin Skywalker might eventually be the one to bring it. He was never certain. He is, behind the calculation, something very close to satisfied. Then let us see, Sidious says, what you truly are. The lightning comes. The storm that leaves Palpatine's fingers is not a bolt. It is a sustained arc, continuous, feeding itself. The kind of output that requires not just power, but the willingness to commit everything to a single application with absolute conviction. In the original confrontation the canonical record carries, a discharge of this sustained magnitude was sufficient. It ended things. It was always meant to end things, because the suit was always designed to conduct it. And conducting it was always how the insurance policy paid out. The arc hits Vader square in the chest. He stands. The cortosis mesh receives the current. The suit's chest piece flares white, genuinely visibly white, glowing in the gray Korriban morning like something that was never designed to glow, overloaded past its rated tolerance, and then past the margin Vader calculated, and then into territory where the calculation becomes uncertain. 1 second. He counts it. The primary conduction channel registers the redirected load. The modified ventilation paths activate. The energy disperses outward along the outer surface, in channels he threaded with his own hands over 21 days in a maintenance bay on Deck 7. The glow fades. The chest piece is still hot. The heat vents into the cold Korriban air, and the two temperatures meet at the suit's surface, like a line drawn between what was designed and what replaced it. He is still standing. Palpatine looks at him. The look on his face requires no narration. He does not have time to narrate it. Vader is already moving. He uses the ground. 2 days of mapping it. 2 days of memorizing the specific topology of the Valley of the Dark Lords, where the stone is stable, where the older tombs have weakened the underlying rock, where the approach paths narrow, where the dead zones begin and end, and the investment returns now in the specific way that preparation always returns, not as advantage exactly, but as the elimination of uncertainty on one side of the equation. He knows where every shadow falls. Palpatine does not. He pulls the first stone marker, a monolith marking the tomb of a lord whose name he didn't look up, irrelevant, and brings it down laterally across Palpatine's left flank. Not a projectile. A barrier. Forcing movement to the right, into terrain that Vader has categorized and Palpatine has not. The Emperor moves with the supernatural grace of a being whose body is sustained rather than lived in, and he moves correctly, rightward, toward what appears to be open ground. It is not open ground. The dead zone begins 11 meters into that approach. Vader knows this. He has walked its boundary 3 times. He drives Palpatine toward it with constant grinding force pressure, not dramatic bursts, not the kind of application that announces itself and invites response, but the persistent, accumulating pressure of a man applying leverage with the patience of someone who has planned to be here. Palpatine redirects, attempts to push back. His force output is enormous, a century of cultivated power, the full investment of a man who has spent his entire adult life building toward a single application, a final mastery that was always supposed to be uncontested. The redirect produces a shockwave that cracks the valley floor between them in a line running from Palpatine's position toward the nearest tomb entrance. Vader braces against it. His right knee joint absorbs the shockwave's lateral component and reports the damage immediately, a system flag in his peripheral awareness, the specific diagnostic signature of a bent-bearing surface, controllable but degraded. He notes it. He continues. The smell of the valley has changed. What was ancient stone and cold fire has become something closer to a forge. Burning ozone, superheated rock where the lightning has struck, the acrid signature of electronics being damaged faster than they can compensate. The air between them is wrong. Charged. The dark side energy that was already pressing down from every direction has been disturbed into something more active, and the valley is amplifying it the way it amplifies everything. Patiently. Without preference, returning it all. He doesn't stop moving. Every force application is in service of one objective. Close the distance. Palpatine redirects the lightning. He has understood by now that sustained discharge is not sufficient. The chest piece holds it. The suit routes it. The Cortosis insurance policy is genuinely expired. So he redirects, a brief, targeted arc deflected off a piece of falling debris, angled not at the chest but at the left arm, catching the servo joint assembly at the elbow, where the armor plating is thinner, and the redirection load is something the Cortosis mesh was not designed to handle, because the mesh was designed for direct discharge, not redirected angles. The servo joints in the left arm fail. Not break, fail. The distinction matters. He does not lose the arm. He loses precise control of the hand. The grip capacity degrades from full function to approximately 30%. The fingers responding to gross commands but not fine ones, the hand becoming a blunt tool rather than a precise one. He notes it. He continues. The right knee's damaged bearing worsens under the compensated gait. The suit's systems flag the left arm as a priority repair. 17 subsystems are running in degraded states, the accumulated total of 20 minutes of combat against the most powerful force practitioner in the galaxy. Pain is not information in Vader's experience. It has not been information for a year. The suit is always pain, always pressure, always the grinding mechanical awareness of a biological organism in a system not designed for comfort, always the heat and restriction and the specific sensory deprivation of inhabiting a machine. Additional pain is a higher reading on a scale that has never registered anything comfortable. He reads the higher number and continues. The scale still functions. The being the scale is attached to still functions. These are the relevant data points. He keeps moving. Palpatine applies telekinetic force to the ground beneath his feet, attempting to break his footing on the cracked valley floor. Vader lowers his center of gravity, spreads his stance, and takes 3 steps forward while absorbing it. Each step costs more than the last. Each step is taken. Palpatine reaches into the suit. Not the circuitry. He has tested the circuitry and found it closed. He reaches into the mechanical systems through the Force, targeting the primary cardiac support with the specific compression technique reserved for enemies who cannot be killed cleanly, force pressure applied to the cardiac mechanism the way it might be applied to a biological heart, the crushing precision of a man who has done this before and knows where the mechanism sits and how much pressure it can withstand. The primary cardiac system fails. One breath skips, half a second of nothing, no beat, no count, the respirator mid-cycle with nothing to cycle for. Vader staggers. One step backward, the right knee screaming its diagnostic into his awareness. Then, the secondary cardiac system activates. The one he installed 3 months ago. The redundant architecture, the independent mechanism, operating on a separate power cell with a separate neural interface, carrying the beat forward in the half-second gap without being told. The next breath comes. The count resumes. Palpatine, for the second time, looks at him with something that is not calculation. Vader speaks one sentence. "You built a cage," he says. "I built a weapon." He closes the distance. Within arm's reach, the geometry of the confrontation changes entirely. Palpatine is extraordinary at range. He has always been extraordinary at range. The lightning, the telekinesis, the force techniques that require space to deploy and space to adjust, and the ability to reach across meters and apply himself to a target. He has built a career and an empire on this capability. Up close, he is an old man whose body is sustained rather than maintained, and Vader's body, designed as life support, is incidentally a nightmare in close quarters. The weight of it, the strength of the cybernetic limbs at their compromised function still exceeding what any unaugmented human can produce. The sheer structural density of the suit pressing the space between them into terms that do not favor the smaller party. Palpatine fires the final discharge directly at the optical system. He has calculated correctly that the helmet's visual processing is not cortosis-sheathed, it was not a channel Vader modified, because modifying it would have required removing the helmet entirely and rebuilding it from the inside, and the time and risk were not justified by the probability calculation. The probability calculation was wrong. The optical system burns out. The helmet's vision processing goes dark, not dimmed, not degraded. Gone, black inside the mask, no visual data at any frequency, the suit's primary sensory channel simply absent. He is fighting blind. He does not stop. The Force shows him what the eyes cannot. Palpatine's presence in the current, a black star, dense and cold, ancient and enormous. The accumulated mass of 50 years of disciplined dark side practice, radiating in every direction and pulling the Force around it in spirals. The signature of a man who has been the gravitational center of everything for so long that the Force has shaped itself to accommodate him. He reaches for it. The left hand, degraded 30% capacity, following gross commands only, closes around the black star's physical anchor. The throat beneath the robes, old, thin breathing, with the specific rhythm of a being sustained by something other than ordinary biology. His hand closes. The lightning comes one last time. The cortosis mesh is burning through. He can feel it in the suit's diagnostics, the material integrity failing under sustained overload. Conducting where it was designed to insulate, the modification pushed past its designed envelope by the accumulated discharge of the past 20 minutes. If the lightning comes again at full strength, the chest piece will not hold. The insurance policy will reassert itself in the ruins of its own negation. His optical system is gone. His left arm is degraded. His right knee is damaged. 17 subsystems in failure states. The suit reports all of this in the precise, indifferent language of machines doing their jobs in difficult circumstances. His hand is around Palpatine's throat. There is no next time. His hand is around Palpatine's throat. The Emperor is not struggling. The grip is absolute. The mechanical left hand at 30% capacity is still sufficient for this. And Palpatine has expended everything he had in the last discharge, and the Force sustaining his body has less left to work with than it did 20 minutes ago. He cannot change the grip. He cannot break it. He has nothing left that changes it. The respirator counts. In, out Vader is blind. He has been blind for 4 minutes, and he has not minded it in the way he expected to mind it. Because the Force shows him what the eyes would show him and more, Palpatine's presence hanging in the current before him, still bright, still cold, centuries of cultivated darkness compressed into the physical space beneath his hand. Still vast, still organized, still recognizably the thing that has organized the galaxy for 20 years. He can feel the pulse through his cybernetic fingers. Old, rapid now, despite the composure, the body telling a different story than the voice. The biological animal beneath the Sith Lord doing what biological animals do when they are afraid. Rapid and thin and delivering its beats with a specific urgency of something that understands what is happening even if the mind above it is still performing against it. It is remarkably similar to the pulse he felt when he choked Padmé. He didn't know that then. He knows it now. He holds the position and does not move and counts the beats, and the respirator counts beside them, and the valley counts nothing, just receives, as it always has. Palpatine speaks. Even now, his voice is controlled. This is the most honest thing about him, the specific, absolute commitment to composure in the physical absence of it. The performance maintained is a matter of identity rather than strategy, because a man who performs composure for 50 years becomes inseparable from the performance, and the performance is the only thing left that is entirely his. You have no plan for what comes after, he says. The Empire requires continuity of authority. Without me it fractures along 17 lines of competing succession, and the humanitarian cost of that fracture is measurable in systems. There are contingencies you have not found. Dead men's switches. Loyalists whose activation conditions are already met. I know, Vader says. I don't intend to hold what you built. I intend to change it. A pause. Palpatine's breathing is controlled. The pulse beneath Vader's hand is not. You will be alone, Palpatine says. Everything you are was built to serve a structure. Remove the structure, and what remains is a very powerful instrument with nothing to direct it. Without a master to define the purpose. I have been alone since Mustafar, Vader says. The sentence arrives quietly. It is not an argument. It is a correction to the record, a factual statement from a man who has thought carefully about what the word means. Silence. I built you, Palpatine says. As though this is an argument. As though this means something it has not already been determined to mean. As though this changes the grip. Yes, Vader agrees. Nothing more. One word, carrying everything the agreement contains, that the building happened, that Palpatine made the choices he made with full knowledge and intention, that the documentation in the vault at Wayland says exactly what it says, that none of this is disputed, that the agreement with every fact presented is precisely why the hand is where the hand is. Palpatine is silent. For a moment, behind the performance, something appears that Vader has not seen in 14 months of close proximity to this man. It is not fear. It is something adjacent to recognition, the specific. Private acknowledgement of a craftsman looking at work that has exceeded its design specifications. He thought Anakin Skywalker might eventually arrive here. He was never certain. He is certain now, and the certainty arrives late. He does not give a speech. He does not enumerate crimes, or describe what was taken, or characterize what is about to happen in any language that places him outside it. He does one deliberate, chosen thing, and he does it with full awareness of what it is. He chokes Palpatine the way he choked Padmé. Not approximately, not in the general category of force-augmented grip pressure applied to a throat. He applies the same pressure, the specific load that the medical records from Polis Massa would later characterize as non-traumatic, leaving no physiological evidence, because the force-augmented compression at this calibration disrupts the vascular system rather than the physical tissue, and the disruption produces a cascade rather than an injury, and the cascade produces a notation that reads no physiological cause identified. He knows this calibration. He has known it for a year. He has known it since the moment he woke up in the suit and heard what he was told and believed it. Not in rage, not in grief, with conscious, chosen precision. The same pressure, the same duration. Palpatine spent a year telling him that the moment on Mustafar was the evidence of his own nature, the proof of what he was capable of, the foundation of the guilt that became the chain that became the cage. He applies that same moment back to its architect with full knowledge of what he is doing, and full knowledge of what it means that he can do it without rage, without grief, without any emotional activation that the suit would log as an anomaly. He holds the position as Palpatine's strength fails. In the Force, he watches it happen. The presence that has organized itself in the dark side for a century contracts. There is no other word for it. What was enormous simply becomes less enormous. The way a fire becomes less fire when the fuel runs out. The way a gravity well becomes less itself when the mass at its center decreases. The cold, ancient density of it pulls inward. Smaller, smaller still. The brightness, the specific terrible brightness of cultivated dark side power at full extension, dims, a sun collapsing. The dark side does not mourn its masters, it simply flows to the nearest available channel. Vader feels it redirect without preference or ceremony, the available power of 50 years of Sith practice dispersing into the Valley of the Dark Lords, where it joins the accumulated residue of every lord who died here before, feeding into the geological record, becoming part of the ancient pressure that has been pressing down on everything since before the Republic. Palpatine's Force signature diminishes. Contracts is gone. He sets the body down, not reverently, not violently. He opens the hand and allows gravity to complete what is already complete, and Palpatine's robes settle around him on the ground of the Valley of the Dark Lords where he lies, and the valley receives him the way it has received everyone who has ever come here to be the most powerful thing in a given room. He looks very small. The observation is not contemptuous, it is simply accurate. The body on the ground of the valley is the body of an old man, slight, pale, the physical form that Sith alchemy and Force sustenance have been maintaining against the natural processes for decades and that are no longer being maintained. The centuries of cultivated power that made him enormous have departed, and what remains is the object beneath the power. An old man who built a pyramid on the foundation of one person's grief and called the pyramid an empire. Vader stands over him. The cold. The valley accepts it the way the valley accepts everything, without comment, without adjustment. The valley has been cold for 1,000 years. One more cold thing standing in it changes nothing. He counts his own breaths. In, out, in, out. The suit's diagnostics run their assessment, optical system gone, left arm at 30%, right knee degraded, 17 subsystems in failure states, cortosis mesh burning through its final capacity. The suit catalogs the damage with the indifference of a machine doing its job in difficult circumstances. He lets the catalog run. The damage is real. The damage can be addressed. He is still standing. There is no relief. He had expected something. Not euphoria, not triumph, nothing so simple. But something. Some sensation corresponding to the removal of a weight that has been present for a year. He searches for it and finds instead what the absence of something enormous produces, which is not relief, but adjustment. The gravitational constant has changed. The thing that organized everything for 20 years is simply not there, and the things that were organized around it are going to have to reorganize, and the reorganization will take time and cost things he cannot fully predict. But she is avenged. He holds that sentence and does not dress it further. It is what it is. Whether it is the same as being free, this he does not yet know. Whether there is a version of free available to the thing inside the suit, this he also does not yet know. These are questions for after. He has spent 5 months living in before. He is in the first seconds of after, and he does not yet know what it contains. He knows it contains more work. He knows it contains Naboo, and a grave, and a conversation in the Force that he is not yet ready to have. He knows it contains the galaxy reorganizing itself around an absence. His comm crackles. The Exactor's bridge, his admiral, one of his people, waiting for the signal he said he would send when it was time. "Send the shuttle," he says. 3 words. The Admiral confirms without asking questions. The Admiral has learned not to ask questions, and the learning will serve him well in the period that follows. Vader sits down in the Valley of the Dark Lords, among the ancient dead who have been here longer than the Empire, and longer than the Republic, and longer than most things that have called themselves permanent. He sits in the damaged suit in the cold Korriban morning, and he waits for the shuttle. Somewhere in the galaxy, on Coruscant, on Naboo, in the outer rim and the mid-rim, and every system that has been living under the weight of what just happened and doesn't know yet that the weight has been removed. The galaxy is in the first seconds of not knowing what comes next. He knows. He will tell it. The news travels at the speed of HoloNet transmission and arrives everywhere simultaneously. The galaxy receives it the way the galaxy receives all significant information, as an input requiring a response, as a variable demanding recalculation, as a change in the conditions that everyone who has built anything in the last 20 years built around. Within 4 hours of the transmission leaving the exactor's comm array, every high-ranking military officer, every regional governor, every Moff and admiral and political architect of the Imperial project is performing the same calculation. What does this mean, and what position does that meaning require me to take? Vader is not surprised by any of this. He prepared for it. The 501st secures Coruscant within 8 hours. Not a coup. A coup implies there is a competing authority to displace, and there is no competing authority, because every potential competing authority has been systematically undermined over 4 months of the Silent War. What occurs is more mechanical than that. The new command codes circulate through military channels. The military accepts them. They have been accepting commands from this source for a year. The source has simply become the only source. The transition has the brisk efficiency of an Imperial military operation because it is an Imperial military operation executed by an apparatus Vader spent months ensuring would function correctly when it was needed. The Empire does not fracture. It reorganizes. There are 3 senior Moffs who miscalculate and transmit objections within the first 6 hours. They are reassigned before the objections can circulate further. The remaining Moffs observe this and transmit nothing further. His admirals, the 3 promoted to the rank through competence rather than political convenience, coordinate the fleet repositioning without requiring direct instruction. They understand what is required. This is why he selected them. He does not speak to the Imperial Senate. The Senate is dissolved, and he does not reinstate it. He sends a single transmission to the regional governors, brief, factual, phrased with the precision of a man who has never used 3 words where 2 will do. The Emperor is dead. The Empire continues. The rule of law continues. Those who served in good faith continue in their posts. Those who served Palpatine exclusively will be assessed individually. He does not explain what happened on Korriban. The explanation is implicit in who is transmitting, and the fact that they are still transmitting at all. On Naboo, true to her word, Sab speaks to the systems that need a human voice for what has occurred. The Naboo government, Outer Rim representatives, communities that lost the most under Palpatine's specific preferences and have the most specific reasons to need reassurance that the change is real. She does not call it liberation. She is too precise for that word, and too honest. She calls it a change in management. This is not the language Vader would have chosen. It is not wrong. He sits on the Emperor's throne once. Just once. The throne was designed for a smaller man who projected authority through the specific architecture of elevation, positioned above, surrounded by guards, seen before heard, the geometry of the room a continuous argument for his centrality. Vader's authority has never come from geometry. It has always come from other things. He reads intelligence reports from 12 systems with the same systematic focus he applies to everything, and issues the first directives of his rule. There are 3 of them. The systematic torture of political prisoners is suspended, effective immediately, across all Imperial detention facilities. The Inquisitorius is disbanded. Its members are offered reassignment to conventional military roles or civilian release. The standing hunt and eliminate orders for force-sensitive individuals are revoked. Anti-assembly laws in former separatist worlds are reduced, not eliminated, but reduced. The reduction is specific and measured and creates room for organized dissent within defined parameters. It is not freedom. It is a narrowing of the distance between what exists and what is possible. He does not frame these directives as mercy. They are not mercy. They are management. Palpatine built the Empire exclusively from fear, and fear is a foundation that produces compliance until it produces revolt. And revolt is expensive and destabilizing, and Vader intends what he is building to outlast him. He is under no illusions about what he is. He is not the light. But he is not building the specific darkness that preceded him, and in the space between those two things, something might eventually become possible that was not possible before. He leaves the throne without looking back at it. He goes to Naboo alone. Her grave is in the Lake Country, exactly where he was told it was. In a place that was chosen because it was where she was born, and where she always said she wanted to return. The headstone is simple. It was built by the handmaidens in the immediate aftermath. He was told this, and many other things, in the days after Mustafar, told them by the suit's internal audio system, by medical droids who did not know what they were filing. By reports he was given because someone believed the relevant party had a right to know. He did not hear any of it then. The suit was new, and the pain was total, and there was no room inside the machine for anything that wasn't the machine. He hears it now. The Lake Country in the afternoon is warm and green and alive in the specific way that has no equivalent anywhere in his current existence. The same smell that hit him at Sab's safe house, the same impossible combination of wet stone and growing things and air that has never been recycled through a filter. He processes it as data. The data does not capture it. He does not expect it to capture it anymore. He stands by the grave in the machine, and the machine stands on warm Naboo soil, and the warm Naboo soil does not know what it is holding. In the timeline that should have been, the one that didn't require a vault on Wayland or a dead mountain on Korriban or 5 months of threading filament through his own circuitry in the dark, he would have been here differently. Would have stood here in different clothes, with a different body, with a heart that managed its own beating. Would have brought flowers, would have come every year. The children would have come with him when they were old enough to understand. She would have been buried knowing that the person who loved her most was still, in the ways that mattered, himself. He has no flowers. He stands in the machine for a long time and tries to reconstruct precisely what warm felt like. The Force has remarkable retention in places of love. It keeps the imprint the way stone keeps a handprint, and this ground kept her for the years before she was in it, and keeps her differently now. He can find the memory in the Force. He can locate the warmth of what this place meant to her and what she meant to him, and what those two things combined produced. He cannot access the sensation. The suit mediates everything. Temperature is data. Touch is data. The warmth in the Force is accessible, and the warmth in the body is gone. And it is not the same thing, and it will never be the same thing. He will never be warm again in the way that has nothing to do with temperature. This is the cost. He looks at it directly. He pays it. He speaks to her in the Force. Not aloud. The respirator makes conventional privacy impossible, and this is not a conversation for the respirator. In the deep channel that two people who have loved each other leave permanently open in the fabric of the galaxy, whether they intend to or not, in the specific wavelength of a bond that Palpatine found optimal for a transfer, and that outlasts the transfer that outlasts everything, he speaks. He tells her what he found, what the Force Echo showed him in the doorway of Medical Bay 7. What the timing log said, what was filed in the Wayland vault between 2 inventory records. He does not protect her from any of it, because she does not need protecting and never did, and he spent too long making decisions on the basis of protecting people who were capable of bearing their own truths. He tells her that the empire that will bear his name instead of Palpatine's will not be kind in the way she was kind, in the way that came from a person who still had full access to the experience of being alive, who still inhabited her own warmth, who could still choose generosity from inside a life that had room for it. He is not capable of that kind. But the empire will be ordered, and it will be just in the ways he is capable of just, which is not all the ways, but more than none. And the distance between none and some is the only distance he has to work with. He tells her he doesn't know if it was enough. He has spent 5 months asking that question and arriving at the same answer. She would want him to stop. To set the machinery of vengeance down and find whatever small surviving piece of Anakin Skywalker still functions inside the suit and let it breathe. Let it exist. Let it be something other than a weapon pointed at a target. He doesn't know if he can do that. He doesn't know what that looks like from inside the machine. The Force between them is not empty. He confirms this carefully, the way he confirms all data, checking against alternative explanations, testing for error. It is not empty. It is also not warm. It is something that does not have a name in any language he currently has access to, and it seems appropriate that it doesn't have a name, because naming it would require understanding it fully, and he understands almost nothing about what he is now or what he is building toward. She always had better words than he did. This was always true. He knew it when he was 9 years old, and found her standing in the rain on Tatooine and couldn't think of a single useful thing to say, and he knows it now, and the knowing of it is one of the few things in this existence that costs nothing to carry. He turns from the grave. The suit runs its diagnostics. The optical system is still gone, awaiting replacement parts that his engineers are already sourcing. The left arm servo joints are scheduled for full rebuild. The right knee-bearing surface is repaired but logged for monitoring. The cortosis mesh in the chest piece is burned through and will be replaced with the next generation of the modification, improved against the load data this confrontation provided. The respirator counts. In, out, the galaxy waits for its new ruler to decide what comes next, and what comes next is enormous and uncertain and nothing Palpatine ever intended. The systems that were organized around a single, permanent center of gravity are reorganizing themselves around an absence, and the reorganization will take years and cost things that cannot be calculated yet, and he will be present for all of it. He walks back through the lake country to his shuttle. The warm Naboo air follows him. The smell of living things follows him. It will not follow him into space, and he does not expect it to. He is not built for places where things are alive and know it. He is not Anakin Skywalker. He is not, entirely. The thing Palpatine made and named and filed in a vault between inventory records. He is something the galaxy has no prior model for, a man who chose, consciously and with full information, what to destroy and what to keep, and who will have to live inside both choices for as long as the machine keeps him alive. That he chose partly wrong and partly right, and cannot yet determine which is which. This is the remainder, the thing that doesn't resolve, the weight that is not grief and not guilt and not hope exactly, but some structural combination of all three that he does not yet have the language for. She would have had the language for it. He boards the shuttle. The ramp closes. Korriban is behind him. Coruscant is ahead. The lake country recedes in the viewport until it is just a green mark on a blue world, and then just a blue world, and then just a point of light, in a galaxy full of points of light, all of them waiting for something to be different than it was. The respirator counts his heartbeats. He has work to do. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.